Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Thank you so much for coming. Welcome. My name is T. Michael Boyle. I might be familiar to some of you. I'm a parishioner here at Christ the King along with my wife. Our kids went to school here a couple of years ago. And I went to school here many more years ago. And so did my dad and my mom. Anyway, so Christ the King is a big part of our family. And a couple of years ago, my wife and I took a trip to Ireland, and where we were introduced to Father McManus, and the co-author of their most recent book, Brothers in Arms, Jimmy Fullam. So, and they'll explain a little bit more how they fit into our family, but along with my uncle Steve Christ, who's an avid Camino walker now, I can say that now, right, Steve? You're an avid Camino, an avid pilgrim. He has walked with Jimmy and is about to do another Camino with Jimmy and with Father McManus. So I think you're going to enjoy tonight's talk. It's about using walking as prayer. And a little bit about Father McManus. He's a Jesuit priest who comes from a farm in Northern Ireland. He is, before he was a priest, he was actually in the IT industry in London and did that for several years until he got the tap on the shoulder and entered the Jesuits in Dublin. He has worked as a youth minister and a school chaplain, and is currently a writer and a spiritual director, a retreat giver for the Jesuit community in Ireland and subsequently here in the U.S. and Canada. He's written a number of books, including On the Camino, 4 on the Camino, one called Redemption Road, another one called The Way to Manresa, Contemplating the Camino, and his most recent one is Brothers in Arms, and others, several others on Ignatian spirituality. And he currently works as a spiritual director and a retreatant in Belfast, Northern Ireland. So, without further ado, Father Brendan McManus.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Everybody understand me? I've got this real funny accent, so you have to put up with me. Just take a moment to pray. I just ask for your prayers. Lord, just give me the words I need. Help me to communicate your action in my life. Help me to communicate where you're working in people's lives in order that they could realize your great love for them, in order that they could be instruments of your love in the world. Through Christ our Lord. Amen. I just want to tell you a story. It's a true story, and it's my story. And it is a very Irish thing, right? You tell a story, and so that this is not preaching, or this is not, I'm not trying to do some high-flying theology or whatever. I'm just trying to tell you, this is what happened. This is what happened to me. This is what happened in my life. This is the way that God was working. So it all starts at the beginning. I was brought up on a farm in the north of Ireland. Just check this works. This is the farm. See that? So this is the harvest and the summer year that you have to bring the grass in. It's called silage. So this is me here. See on the left. And right at the back is my brother. You can see him, he's standing up. I'm right at the very back of the grassy area there. So I'll get to him in a moment. But there was 6 of us kids, and my mum and dad, and we were brought up as Catholics, obviously in the good Irish sense. So going to Mass every Sunday, the Rosary at home, especially my granny. I remember her most especially. She used to bring me to Mass when I was a kid, and I remember that sits in my head quite a bit. But some of my earliest memories are just simply, the way when you work on a farm, you have to do work, even as a kid, Everybody gets pulled in, so you're doing something. So from the age of about 9 or 10, I was working. My dad used to send me out this is a mountainous area where we had some land rented, and he would send me out to count the cows, to check that they were all there. So at the beginning, I used to resent this. I don't want to be going off, walking over this. This is called bog. Have you heard this word? It's a special name for this special area in Ireland, which is this very wet, damp ground. It's like an ecosystem, so it's very soft. There's lots of water, and so bog walking is quite an art. You have to keep moving in case you sink. That was my first lesson, but I remember something about that time. Just walking in nature. I mean, this is a beautiful area. You can see that it's a special type of landscape. It's a special type of soil. There's a special type of engagement with the country. But that's where my first sense of contemplation. I realise now, looking back, so contemplation is just simply being present to what is real, being present to God in the beauty of nature. So that love of nature has stayed with me basically my whole life. Just being out in nature does something for me, reminds me of who I am, where I'm from, where I'm going. So that's my first moment. I have 8 moments, okay? So I'll go through them all. But this is the first one, and I think early memories are really important. What happens in childhood, how you're brought up. And for me, it was a lovely childhood, and it was a lovely upbringing, and it was very close, very tight family, very tight community. But also, we grew up in the Troubles in the north of Ireland. You've all heard of that, the violence. So I was growing up in that period, so that was quite tense. So very high security, helicopters flying over, getting stopped, security checked by the British Army, by the police, the local soldiers, etc. Very tense, and there would be some shootings and there'd be bombings happening, different things. So it wasn't easy, and it also started to segregate the community. Remember, the Catholic and Protestant thing in the north is quite marked, and the violence serves to drive the two sides apart. So that was all part of this. So then going forward a bit, so then going to school, and unfortunately then my dad got really sick. He had a massive heart attack, so I had to look after the farm. Unfortunately, my father died when I was 19, so I had to look after the farm for 2 years. That was my first job, my first serious job. So I also realised, even though it was a lovely job being out in nature and doing some meaningful work, but I realised it wasn't really for me. And this is, looking back now as a Jesuit, I realised this was my first discernment. Have you heard this word? Discernment. It's trying to figure out what is God saying to you. So I was realising this is not for me, I think. But my next brother, his name was Donald, he was just finishing school, so he wanted to work on the farm. So I was just keeping it going for him. So that was it, 2 years working in the farm, in charge of 100 cows, 120 acres, all the responsibility in doing things. But it was a bit of a, the word, wise up. It was a bit of a wise up moment, because I realised, this is serious, this is going to be your life. So once I got a chance, my brother took over, and then I went back to college to study. And I realised I really want to do this, This is because I need to get a job, and I want to do something with my life. So my first job, yeah, I'm sorry, I look so young there. I had hair back then. It's all gone since. But I was working for an American company, Hewlett Packard, HP. So, studied psychology, and then I did information technology in England. So this was done in the south of England. Got a job working software development, testing software for ease of use, applied psychology. So it was a great job, and very quickly I got all the things I thought I wanted, right? So a job, a great job, you know, the house, the sports car, right? And girlfriend, you know, trips to the States. I remember being over in California a number of times, and I was still relatively young, and I had all these things very quickly. And it seemed great, you know, it seemed great. Everybody thought it was brilliant, you know. You can see here, I'm very, very full of myself, as I say. Thinking, I'm a made guy, you know. But something happened inside of me, though, that it just wasn't happy, even with all those things, right? All those external things. It didn't fill me in here. And there was something about the way I was brought up, and something about who I was, and something about the way God was working with it. I realized all this afterwards, you know, looking back, I can see it quite clearly. But at the time, I had a real sense of unease, a real sense of this is not for me, I'm not happy doing this, you know. I remember getting a nosebleed one day at work. I remember being in the lavatory just washing my face and saying, you know, I'm really miserable here, I just don't like this. Again, looking back, I realized this was God working with me. In the Jesuit terms, it's called desolation, which is you're going in the wrong direction. God's trying to say, I want you to do the opposite, do something different. I want you to wake up. So part of that process was looking for where I was going. And I used to walk, you see the photograph? I used to walk in the mornings before work in this forest next to where we were working. And there was something about the walking that it just helped me. It helped me to get a perspective. It helped me to get away from the work life. It helped me to get my head clear, you know. And I remember going to a retreat as well with some sisters in the New Forest, which is in the south of England. And again, walking for hours in the forest just seemed to help me. The big moment was going to this Benedictine monastery in the Isle of Wight, and I didn't even know what a retreat was, you know. This is the irony. But I knew in the back of my head that this is somewhere you can go to try to figure out what you're going to do. So I remember coming down here for the weekend, and the Isle of Wight is an island, obviously, off the coast. So driving down my sports car, I pulled up here on the gravel one evening, a Friday evening, and I said to there was an old Benedictine monk, and I said, you know, I'm here for the weekend, you know, and if you're expecting me, and he said, sorry, who are you, anyway? And he said, what day is this? I thought, I was so stressed I was going to kill him, you know. But I thought, this guy has some peace of mind that I don't have, you know, there's something here for me. So I remember being there for the weekend. I remember, I didn't even know how to pray or meditate. Sitting in the chapel one night, just watching the little red light on the sanctuary lamp, and just sitting in the dark watching the red lamp, and I had a real sense of God's presence, you know. Again, very simple, a simple sense of this insight about this lifestyle is killing you, and you have to get out, you have to go somewhere else. So that journey, that looking for something real, looking for what I was going to do in my life. So that brought me back to England, and then I resigned from my job, and I was offered a job in Australia. So I went to Australia for 2 years. This is travel the world sort of stuff, you know. But my priorities were different now. I was looking for where am I heading. So even though I was working in the same job, working in computers, IT with a bank, but I was doing retreats, doing meditation, and just by coincidence, or God incidents, I was in a Jesuit parish. The local parish was a Jesuit parish. Everybody know what the Jesuits are?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So it's an order in the Catholic Church, an order of priests and brothers. But the Jesuits have a slightly different way of doing things, isn't that right? It's like finding God in the world, engaging with people, and this sense of where is God working in my life, and what should I do? That thing about translating it into action, you know. It's not just an idea, it's something that's in my heart that's moving me to action to do things. So I remember meeting the Jesuits there in Sydney. I met this one Jesuit in particular, very charismatic, and I used to meet with him. We would talk. Of course, afterwards I realized that was spiritual direction. That my job that I do now, I realized he was just simply helping me to talk about what was important, where I was going. I remember praying with a piece of scripture he gave me, which was about the blind man in Mark's Gospel. It's chapter 10, where the blind man's sitting at the side of the road and he's calling out, and Jesus stops and calls him up. That passage, I prayed with that passage for weeks and months, the same passage, and I kept getting more and more out of it. And I realized, of course, I was the blind man, I was the one that was lost, if you like, and I was looking for direction, and I was asking Christ for help, and I was being indicated. And eventually it came to me that it was the Jesuit thing, obviously, and eventually I had to resign from that job and then come back home to Ireland to join the Jesuits in Dublin. I didn't fancy being away from home forever, in Australia, so coming back home. My mother was delighted, by the way, with this, you can imagine. Her oldest son becoming a priest and coming back home after being away for so long and after, living the high life and doing all these things. So then joining the Jesuits, 1992, at the age of 30, came a huge transition, and there was this ceremony to enter the Jesuits in Dublin, just very simple. But imagine the change of lifestyle, the loss of independence, the having to live very simply, not having your own money, not having a car, not having any of those things I used to have. And the first 2 years of the Jesuit training is called the novitiate, which is all these different experiences you have to do. And it's all these kind of testing experiences, but it's all about learning how to reflect, how to find God in different things. So the two key ones are, there's a 30-day silent retreat. Sounds like a lot, doesn't it? So it's a tough experience. So you don't talk all the time, even during the meals, and you meet your spiritual director once a day for about half an hour. But you work through a series of meditations on the life of Christ. So you get to know Jesus directly through Scripture and meditation, and it was quite an exceptional experience, just to learn to pray to this God who is close and intimate and involved in my life, and who was speaking to me, communicating with me, and leading me somewhere. And it was so life-giving, it was so exciting. So that's the first big thing, the 30-day silent retreat. Then the second thing, you have to do a walking pilgrimage in Spain, but with no money and with no Spanish, right? So you've heard of the Camino de Santiago. Most people have heard of it. This big pilgrim walk in Spain. So this is the Jesuit Camino. So it goes in the opposite direction, like most Jesuit things, And it retraces the footprints of Ignatius of Loyola, the founder of the Jesuits. It goes from his birthplace, Loyola, in the Basque Country. It goes across to near Barcelona, Manresa, which is a place where he lived in a cave for a while. So you literally retrace his footsteps, 500 miles. And that's a tough experience, I can tell you. The first time I ever slept out in a field overnight, So here I've gone from having my own house and having the high life to being out in a field, sleeping in a hole in the ground one night. So dramatic change, But that experience, that was really tough. You can imagine, not eating properly, not sleeping properly, asking for food and accommodation, trying to find a way. I lost a lot of weight, by the way. I recommend it for losing weight. But there was two of us, we went together, And after about a week or so, I was thinking of packing it in. I was thinking of going home. It was so difficult. It was so challenging. It was so tough. And the other guy who was with me, Tony, he's from Cork. He's got an even funnier accent than I have, you know. And I was saying to him, look, Tony, I'm thinking of going home. This is because we basically walked all day with virtually no food, and we were starving. We eventually got into this. There was a church hall, and we had these Red Cross emergency rations. I'll never forget. We were eating the rations out of a tin. And I'm thinking, I can't do this every day just to do the same thing. I think I'll have to pack it in. And he said to me, in classic Jesuit fashion, he said, that's okay if you want to do that. He said, you haven't prayed about this. He said, you haven't prayed about this. And it was bang on, he was dead right, you know. So I took myself off into a corner of the church hall. This is just one of the shots from the pilgrimage. Quite challenging country as well. These shorts were all the fashion back then. So I'm in the corner of the church hall and I'm praying like I never prayed before. You know, I'm saying, you have to help me here. You know, it's not just the words, it's the engagement of your whole being is on the line here. And I'm saying, please help me, indicate to me what I should do here. You know, let me do this walk. If this is what you want me to do, then let me do this. And again, nothing dramatic, but I got a real clear sense of this is going to be okay, and you can keep walking. And it changed everything. And the fear, which is the big block, the fear started to go. I started to get through the fear. And this was the poster that was on the wall in that church, that hall that night. And I love this image. It's a Spanish artist. And this image became the cover of my booklet when I took my vows as a Jesuit. After 2 years, you take permanent vows. So this was the cover of the booklet because it had been such a key moment for me. And just that image, the person of Jesus. This is the person that we relate to. This is a real person. This is a real relationship. And this is a two-way relationship. So there's speaking and there's listening and there's communication that's always going on. And that's the heart of the Jesuit formation. That's the heart of our faith, obviously, isn't it? The relationship with Jesus is the central thing. So this is us finishing in Madrid. This is actually Montserrat, you know, the mountainous region there with the Benedictine monastery. But we were so happy. And it was such an amazing experience to have got through that and to have survived. And we were absolutely overjoyed. And our friendship, you know, the bond, being together through this hardship was amazing. So we're still really good friends even after all that. So then being ordained a Jesuit priest, the Jesuit training is really long. It's about 10 years, you know. Even I did the fast track because it was a bit older, you know, but it was still a long time. But again, that was an amazing day with friends of mine back in my home parish, my first mass, you know, and then obviously with my mother and the celebration with the family. And the farmhouse that we were brought up in was 200 years old that year, so we had a party in the farmhouse, you know. It was a lovely, lovely event. Everything seemed to come together. And then my first ministry was leading youth retreats, walking retreats. You can see the connection here. Obviously, I wanted people to have the same experience that I had had. You know, I want people to realize, you know, God is communicating with you. Your life is important. You can find direction where you're going. So bringing people out in nature, on a walk to some of these Irish pilgrimage sites. We used to go to one near Dublin, Croagh-Patrick, the Holy Mountain, etc. And you can do these pilgrimages over a few days, over a weekend. and people get a huge amount out of it. And a lot of it is just simply walking in silence, and just create the possibility for people to walk in silence, and something always happens, because God is always with us. Sometimes we're not with God. You just got to leave yourself open, and then things happen. So unfortunately, then, this was a real shock. Unfortunately, I remember my brother that stayed at home on the farm. Unfortunately, he took his own life. It was absolutely devastating. You can imagine. I can't even talk about it hardly. Probably the worst day of my life then as a priest. Doing his funeral and trying to say something meaningful about it. I broke down on the altar. Obviously, it was absolutely heartbreaking. And trying to find a way through it. And being a priest, I'm sure some people here have experienced it. I know what I'm talking about. The grief process is quite complicated, and trying to find a way through it. And I remember, doing everything that I knew I had to do. So getting counselling, going to a suicide support group, speaking about it, getting help, writing about it. And it was a long time. It was a number of years. And I'm still caught up in the thing and still struggling. And then I had a really clear insight that you need to get back on the road. You need to walk in order to process this. I just knew it inside myself. You can see from the past, I knew that walking is where I get the answers. That walk we did in the novitiate in Spain. So I said, I'm going to walk the Camino de Santiago in Spain. So that was my next thing. In 2011, I decided I was going to walk it's called the Northern Route. People know the different routes. It goes right along the coast in the north. It's quite a challenging walk. And everybody walks to Santiago. Remember the cathedral in the west of Spain? So it's 500 miles. It's 5 weeks, and I had 5 different injuries, along the way, which is classic. And I just went my own, and I just wanted to walk on my own. You can understand it. I didn't want, parties or socializing or staying up late, and I just wanted to be on my own in nature. This is my favorite photograph in the Basque Country. One morning, really early, 7 a.m. I'm on the road. I'm on my own. I took this on a timer on a post. I wanted to capture the moment, and it was just absolutely beautiful. Being there, being nature, being present, being with God. Absolutely beautiful moment. And of course, things got much more difficult. Getting injured. This was cramp that I got one day, but I had shin splints, really bad blisters, I had to take time out. And each time, I would take time out, I'd have to go to the doctor or get fixed up. And I would start again, but every time you start again, you're a little bit less energy, you're a little bit more tired, you're a bit, and at the end I was like literally crawling into Santiago, So this is me arriving in the cathedral in Santiago, really emotional moment, getting to the end of the pilgrimage. And I had one thing of my brother's that I had kept, just the one thing. I had a t-shirt of his, and I had kept it. I had it in my backpack, and I told my family I'm going to bring it to the cathedral. I'm going to bring it to the altar in Santiago, This is going to be my symbol. And so I'm in the cathedral thinking, how can I get to the altar? Because they have the altar cordoned off, and there's security in it. You can't get near it, And then I thought, hold on, as a priest, right, I can get in to celebrate the Mass, and I can get up on the altar. So the next thing, I'm in the sacristy, and I'm saying I'm a priest from Ireland, I'm a Jesuit, and so I'm on the altar, and we're doing the Eucharistic prayer, and in the prayer it says, remember, it says that we remember our brothers and sisters who have fallen asleep in Christ. Do you remember those lines? Just by coincidence, those lines fell to me in the celebration of the Mass, and I'm saying that in Santiago with thousands of pilgrims all around me. It was absolutely emotional, And I was that I knew. He's based in San Francisco, And he said to me, let's go out to the coast, let's go to Finisterre, name of the little village. It's about 90 miles from Santiago, right on the ocean where the Camino finishes. He said, let's go there for the day. And I said, I'm really tired here. I said, I'll do it as long as I don't have to walk. You know, I couldn't walk another step. So we went out in the bus, and as we got there, we were right out to the cave at the end, and the pilgrims burn their clothes. Have you heard of this? They're not allowed to do it anymore. See, the rocks are black, they're scorched black, but they used to burn their t-shirts and clothes and boots, every single thing. And I saw this the first night I went out. I saw that, and I thought, that's a bit strange, you know, doing all that. And then suddenly this thing hit me. There's something that I have to burn. Just like this suddenly realization, you know what I'm talking about? The next morning, fasting, just like every other morning I feel myself getting emotional now. So I went out first light, and I burned my brother's t-shirt at the rocks on my own at the end of the Camino. And I just melted, I just came apart, you know. I had this complete cathartic meltdown. But it was such a grace. I felt God's healing at that moment. It lifted the weight off me. You know, you feel responsible, you feel guilty, you feel you didn't do things right. I got that grace, the grace of healing. And this is the moment just afterwards. And the joy of the release, you know. I went home a different man, different priest, you know. And I went for a swim in the ocean just after this as well. It was like revisiting your baptism, you know. It was such a joyous moment. So then coming home back to Belfast, and I wrote this book about that experience, that Camino, that story about what happened to me on the road, and that grace that I got at the end. And to my amazement, it became an Irish bestseller. Right? This book changed my life. So all of a sudden, I'm getting all these invitations to speak and to talk about suicide bereavement, because it's pretty unique being a priest and being bereaved by suicide. And I did some training to be able to speak and train ministers and people in bereavement groups. So like at one stage it was every single week I had a commitment. I was traveling up and down the country, speaking at conferences, speaking at bereavement groups, speaking at parishes, talks, everything about suicide and bereavement and how to get through, what might help, and etc. So this is a talk that I give. I still hadn't heard back then. You see that? It's all gone now. But again, that was an extraordinary couple of years, and you know, feeling that I was doing something that God was using my experience, difficult as it was, that it was being used in order to help other people. But then I was starting to get a bit burned out. You know, it was quite demanding, and I thought I need another Camino to fix me. You know. So then this is 2015. I'm back on the Jesuit Camino again, the same one that I did back in '92, the Jesuit Camino, called the Ignatian Camino. This is the Spanish version, Camino Ignaciano. So this is Loyola, and the Basilica where St. Ignatius, his house is dedicated to St. Ignatius. So again, starting off on that Camino, and again, I'm full of beans, and I'm thinking this is going to be brilliant, like the last one was, you know. But unfortunately, I was walking first thing in the morning. I was taking a shortcut, right? Don't do this, okay? Don't do what I did. Taking a shortcut in the morning, and I step off the edge of the road, but this car blinds me. I fall on my knee, and I bust my knee. And I have to go to the medical centre, and they see all the scrapes and bruises, and they thought this was hilarious, by the way. You know, this priest being all cut up. So they bandaged me up and, you know, checked me out and said, look, you're okay, just take a day off, take some aspirin, you'll be okay. Without realizing that the kneecap was fractured actually underneath this. So I'm trying to walk, and I'm in a fair bit of pain, you know. So even though Jimmy will recognize this shot, and at the top of the mountains, I was still, it wasn't a great experience. I was struggling quite a bit, you know. And eventually I had to abandon the Camino after about 100 kilometers, because I was limping quite a bit. The irony is, St. Ignatius Loyola limped his whole life, you know. So I often joke, you know, if you want to imitate Ignatius, you have to limp across Spain. So that's what I did. So I came home, eventually got diagnosed, and they put me in a cast, you know, and I could see got the x-ray, could see the fracture, you know. Three doctors missed the fracture, by the way. There's no doctors here tonight.
No one admitting.
Two of my siblings are doctors. I often tease them about this. So, and being laid up at home, again, it's you know, being invalided, again, just like Ignatius Loyola, it's quite a challenging experience, and it puts you back on your reserves and your prayer and what am I about, where am I going, and it was a tough moment. But again, good things came from it. I saw a friend of mine on Facebook who was posting these poems and reflections. I eventually got together with him and I said, what about if we were to do a book together? And the two of us wrote a book called Finding God in the Mess. Finding God in the Mess. You can see how this fits into this. In fact, my whole experience is life is often a mess, but God is in the middle of that somehow. So the other irony was that I published this book about that particular Camino, about what happened, and the walking, the limping, trying to get diagnosed, trying to get through the whole thing. So back in my house at home, the Jesuit house, people joke with me, you know, when I go off to Spain, the Camino, everything goes wrong, but I come back and I get a book out of it, you know. So it's a funny the way things work, the way God works. And I actually had an amazing Camino experience in the best sense, that I learned a huge amount. I learned a lot about expectations. Because of my previous Camino, expectations were way up here. It's going to be amazing. I'm going to have the same experience. And the actual experience was down here. So letting go of expectations, you know, you have to live in the reality of what happens. God is in the real and not in the ideal. Learning that lesson, you know. You have to deal with where you are, what's in front of you, what's happening. That's where God is. There's no point in trying to wish it to be different, you know. So engaging with reality, finding where God is in the middle of all this. So then, just skipping forward again, coming back to the Camino de Santiago, the Ignatian Camino, 2022 was the 500-year anniversary. So I was in Spain doing a course and I wanted to do this again. But this friend of mine, I'm going to invite Jimmy Fullam, who's he's a Dublin taxi driver, and he had contacted me through the Jesuits. He's a recovering alcoholic, and he wanted to walk the Camino with me in 2022 in the anniversary year. So the two of us, we walked together. We did a retreat together, and obviously I was trying to help him to get his life together. He was working through a number of issues. We spoke together quite a bit. Obviously, you're on the road together. You're living together, you're in hostels together, you're eating together, you're walking together. So we became really good friends, and we wrote this book together again. It's called Brothers in Arms. We have some copies over here if you'd like. But I'd like to invite Jimmy to come up and just to tell us his story about what he got out of that, because it encapsulates my job as a spiritual director. My job is to accompany people in their lives, to help them to find God, just to be there for people, to create a space to listen to what people are saying, and to try to, based on my own experience, what's happened, to try to suggest what might be helpful for them to know how they might find God. So Jimmy, if you'd like to come up, please. Jimmy's going to tell us about the walk, what happened during that walk.
Hello? Okay. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. When I was Jimmy, James, you call me Jimmy. Everybody knows me as Jimmy. I'm a double taxi driver. I'm a recovering alcoholic. At the moment, I'm sober today, but I'm overall 10.5 years sober. So, I was walking the Camino de Santiago in 2018, and I met a pilgrim who told me he was on the Camino Ignatian Way, which crosses the Camino that I was on. Just the walk of St. Ignatius of Loyola. I was intrigued. I went home. I contacted the Jesuits, and I ended up in 2022 on this particular Camino with Father Brennan after contacting him and going through a few things. Of course, we went through, there was COVID and stuff before that, so we didn't really have much. Everything we did was all, the plan was all done on the phone, emails and that. So we met in Spain in 2022 in a place called Agrona, and we kicked off from there. This turned out to be a massive experience for me, a really, really brilliant experience to walk with this man, spiritual director, and the things that he did for me. The way I learned how to find God again. Although I did a 12-step program in AA, and I was, thought I was kind of bulletproof, but I wasn't. I was missing something. I hadn't touched a drink, I hadn't had a slip, but I was frightened at that stage. And this man seeked on our walk and found out where my problems were and sorted them out for me. So far, so good. He helped me to find God again. He helped me to have a better direction in my life, how to talk to God. Simple stuff, but, it works. I remember one particular incident because Father Brennan had to leave me for a couple of days and got home to a funeral in Belfast. His uncle had died, and I was left out on my own out in the wilderness. I couldn't speak Spanish. I was nearly hospitalised. I ended up in a place called Zaragoza. And although I was 9.5 years sober, and I had a couple of obsessions in my time, but I never drank. But when I walked into the bus station in Zaragoza, because I had to get a bus because the trail had been cut up on the far side, I discovered that my credit card had been hacked, and I lost my glasses. And I was in a bad way. And I was looking around in this bus station, and everything around me was just spinning. I was looking around, every second premises was a bar, or a wine bar, bars. And I knew I was being prodded by the devil. It was getting to me. But that quickly turned around by the stuff that Father Brennan had taught me. When you get into this mess, pray and pray and hand it over. And God might not give you the answer straight away. Sometimes He gives it to you quickly, sometimes He gives it to you slowly. But I needed God at that moment. I needed somebody at that moment. The hell with the money, the hell with the glasses. I wasn't prepared to give the life that I had got back away. And I sat down, and the exercises that Father Brennan had taught me on the way, and the examining, and all the Jesuit ways, and all the Ignatian ways, I quickly got this. And within sitting down on the bench, within a half an hour of this happening to me, quickly discovered that my son had booked a holiday in Italy with my credit card the night before, and that's where my money went. The bank had rang me and told me that, and I was happy then because I knew it was okay. But this was God sending this to me. You know, I could have done something very, very silly that I would have been sorry for the rest of my life for. And I walked up to the reception to book the bus, and I asked if anybody found a pair of glasses. I handed them in, and the lady just took the pair of glasses up and handed them in. So we're back on track now. But this was the sermon, and this was what Brendan talks about, and he talks about this very good, and he did to me on the way. This was desolation. This was the height of desolation. What do we do when we get into this desolation? You know, well, we hand it over. You know, thinking too quick leads people to make too many bad decisions. And thank God he didn't make one that day anyway. When desolation soon, very, very soon, turned to consolation. And I quickly learned how to talk to God, and how to, you know, after this was my first big experience with God Himself. You know, although, as I said, I went through a 12-step program, you know, I learned all the ways, and the third step in AA is where we hand ourselves off to God. But this was stronger. This was like my 13th step, or an enhanced third step, you know. And anybody here that's in addiction, or anybody here in recovery, will totally understand what I'm saying, where I was that day. I continued on with Brendan. Brendan met me after that. We continued on. We ended up in Manresa together in the caves where St. Ignatius lived. He said Mass for me. And I'll never forget it as long as I. But where did that bring me? Was even when I went home, and this is where it starts. What did I bring home with me from my experience with Father Brendan McManus, with God, and at St. Ignatius? I know now that I have a direction in my life, and a big direction. And this has a massive effect on me, and it also has a massive effect on my family. A massive ripple effect. The peace and harmony and whatever else good it brings. We just live in unity, and we don't have very much, you know, but I tell you what we do have. We have peace, and you can't buy that. And thanks very much for listening to me.
Thank you, Jimmy. He's a star, isn't he? I'm just going to finish very quickly here, and then we'll have some questions and answers. So, this is Jimmy and myself on the Camino. It was about 40 degrees of heat, which is, I think it's 115 Fahrenheit. Some of the afternoons were absolutely scorching, really, really testing. We had to get up really early in the mornings in order to be able to walk at all. Some days we had to sit it out. It was so hot. There was emergency warnings, you know. And then this is the book that we wrote together, the Brothers in Arms, which is a Dire Straits song, right? And we're both Dire Straits fans. And there's a lot of music in the book as well. And we have a song every chapter. There's a different theme song, you know. So then, just the final one, number 8 experience was, people often ask me, can you do the Camino at home? So this is called the Shlí Colmcille, which means Colmcille's Way, or the Camino of Colmcille, who's an Irish saint from the 5th century. So we have a route in the north of Ireland, in Donegal, where we walk in the summer. We do the same thing, the same Camino thing, walking in nature, carrying your pack, walking one-way direction to a special site connected to Colmcille. So it actually starts in the west of Ireland, goes up to Scotland eventually, where we hope to end up. Iona, you know, the island of Iona, which is where he he was very finished up. So this is a group from 2 years ago, and I mean, Donegal is spectacular. Believe me, it's really beautiful. Coastal walk, and amazing mountains and rugged scenery away from everything. And it was a beautiful experience, and people love it. It's a real Camino experience. You have the same elements. So then, just to finish, this is my summary. You know, if I could sum it all up in 8 points. So, first of all, we are pilgrims in the world. Is that right? We're just passing through. You cannot hold on to things. Material possession seems so important, but it's not going to save you, you know, it's not important. What I've learned myself, it's God's world. You know, this has been created by God. We've been created by God. That's what our lives are about, I think. I think Jimmy said it really well there. Our job is to praise the Creator. Our job is to be in relationship with this God who is so close to us, who has given us so many gifts. But we need time and silence. We need to create a space. You can't be, if you're busy all the time, there's no prayer, there's no communication, there's no talking, and it can feel like there's no God. But it's just an illusion. It's just because we're so busy we haven't got time to do it. So creating a space, opening up a space in your life. There is a Jesuit technique called the Examen, E-X-A-M-E-N, which is a really simple technique which I recommend. I have some articles online. If you Google my name plus the word examen, Jesuit, it will come straight up, an article plus a video. It's a way of creating a space at the end of the day to reflect, look back on your experience. So then simple living is the other thing. You know, you don't need so much stuff. It's not about the things, it's not about technology. It's about humanity. It's about, you know, being able to do something meaningful with their life, being able to find God. God is always with us, and sometimes we're not with God, so we need to reverse that, you know, in order to find meaning, purpose in our lives, just like I had to do there. And finally, being open to other people in the world. So trying to help people, trying to change this world, trying to help people, trying to mend a broken world, trying to resolve violence, war, you know, things breaking down, in order to make that a reality, to make this God's world, God's kingdom, you know, where God is in charge, literally. I think that's the end of this talk. Thank you. Questions, and I was going to invite T. Michael to come up and help me. My hearing is not great, you know, after so many years of being on machinery, tractors, and everything. You know, I'm a bit of a wreck. That's the other thing.
So, excuse me. Anyways, thank you so much, Father. And thank you, Jimmy. It's a lot for you to come up and share your personal story and personal journey. I'm sure everybody's grateful for that, so thank you so much. And what great, wonderful information. I'm telling you, I haven't been in the Camino yet, and I'm ready to go, except I still have kids that I have to raise, so Randy, you might be on your own. I think I'm leaving here after this talk. Anyway, so what questions do you have? And not just about, obviously, what we talked about, but I know, because we've done this talk before, you might have some questions about sort of the technical side of the Caminos, because, you know, you saw a lot of pictures of beautiful scenery, but it can also be kind of treacherous. I know I could start off with a question, you know, what is involved physically to get ready for the Camino? Somebody want to take that? What would we need to do physically to get ready for a Camino, should somebody in the audience want to do a Camino?
Sure.
Yeah.
To do a Camino, you don't have to be an Olympic athlete. You start off by doing a couple of kilometers every week on the road yourself. You plan your Camino, which one you're going to do. There's several of them in Spain you can do. You can do short ones, long ones, medium ones. It's up to yourself. And always remember, when you're doing a Camino, that the journey is the destination. It's not getting to the place. The journey is the destination. Go and enjoy it. Don't let the Camino run by you, or don't you run by it. You walk remember that there's thousands and thousands and thousands of people who walked this before you, and you're walking in the footsteps of pilgrims, they going back over 1,000 years. And the other thing I'll tell you is that, again, you don't have to be an Olympic athlete, and you'll soon find out when you get to Spain if you are doing the Camino, and you'll see everybody else in the same boat as yourself. And don't be frightened. Just you go and walk, and that's all you have to do. And one very, very important point about anybody doing Camino is always have a reason for doing it. And that's how you think positive all the time. That will keep you positive, that you'll get to the end of that and you'll finish it. And finish it in a good way. If you have any negativity at all in your head, it'll seep and it'll fester, and you will end up not finish your Camino. I can guarantee you that. Think positive.
I don't know much to add to that. Just often people talk about the training. You have to do a certain amount of training, but a lot of it is about being realistic about what you can do. Anybody can do the Camino. It's about turning down expectations. If you think you're going to do, 30, 40 miles a day, just unrealistic, but people do that. People have these lunatic schemes, the way to talk about it. God laughs at our plans. So the Camino teaches you these lessons about humility, about your humanity, about the limits of things. It's an amazing, amazing experience. But somebody else got a question there? Artist?
Did you mention the charity that you are giving to from the sales of your book?
Oh yeah, so Jimmy and myself decided to give the proceeds of our book, the Brothers in Arms book that we've written together. All the proceeds are going to this charity in Dublin. It's a homeless charity. It's a Jesuit priest there whom I know personally. His name is Peter McVerry. He's a bit of a legend in Ireland because he's so committed to the homeless and their cause and rehabilitation. He set up a whole network of hostels, rehabilitation centres. So we decided to give all the proceeds to him. It's a really good cause, so thank you.
Do you encounter any other religions on this Camino besides Catholicism?
Sure, I think I said you meet everybody, you meet the whole world on the Camino. So, Catholics, Protestants, Jews, Buddhists, everybody's there. And atheists, obviously, and agnostics and every single thing. So the fascinating thing is what happens to people. There's a real solidarity about being there together. Everybody rows in, everybody is telling you why they're doing it, everybody's so open. It's an extraordinary experience, and I think everybody gets something out of it. This is the amazing thing. Regardless, even if you're an agnostic, atheist, I've seen it, something happens. The Camino is a kind of a magic that it works on you. It restores your faith in humanity. It restores your belief that there's meaning to your life. It gives you purpose. It gives you these priorities. It strips away all the unnecessary stuff. It really has an extraordinary experience. But I think that obviously it's a Catholic pilgrimage in essence. The original Camino is based on an old Catholic pilgrimage going back to medieval times. And I think that framework gives you the real meaning of it. It's a spiritual pilgrimage in order to find God, in order to find purpose for your life. I think that framework, and especially the Ignatian, the Jesuit tools, then helps you to make use of that. So if you go on the Camino, there's something significant happening.
Back. Okay, if someone can't get to Spain or Ireland to do a Camino, what would you recommend if they could possibly do something locally, like Tampa or something like that?
Yeah, I always say to people, the Camino is not a place in Spain. The Camino is a place in your heart, right? And all you have to do is create a space for that. You can do a pilgrimage in your own town, in your own city, in your own backyard, you know. It's just a matter of clearing away all the unnecessary stuff. Normally you need to do some kind of journey, and like what Jimmy says, that having the reason. Remember when my brother died, having that reason, that motivation. So I always say to people, find your own pilgrimage, you know. Do it by bicycle, you know, walk to a nearby special place, have a ritual that you can do in order to hold on to the memory of the person, but create your own pilgrimage wherever you do that. The walking is great because it helps, it has all those elements to it, like walking to a special place, and then having the time and getting away from all the clutter and the noise, you know. You don't need phones and iPads and all this stuff and television. That's not gonna help you, you know, and it's gonna do you no good whatsoever. And like Jimmy says, it's desolating. So you have to make the tough decisions. I'm not going to do this. I'm going to do something different. Normally, you need some support. You need a plan. Maybe somebody to accompany you. You need a purpose, a ritual, a place, etc. But you can do it. You know, the Camino is the easy way of doing it because it's all set up for you.
Just a quick one on that. Like you all live in Tampa, every one of you. There's several churches around Tampa. Why not create your own little Camino and walk from one church steeple to the next one? You might do it in a weekend between the whole lot of you. And each one go off in groups with a half an hour space. And you all end up at the next church and you gather there, you say a couple of prayers, and then you do the same again. It's a great idea and you could maybe try that.
The Camino de Santiago. Very treacherous. It's got everything. Heat, traffic.
I don't know, we would be stopping at every coffee shop along the way.
Actually, quick sidebar. I actually just lied to a priest, so we're going to have to go have a conversation after this. No, I actually have done a Camino now that I think about it, because of what you just said. Last time they were in town, obviously we talk about Caminos all the time. This is what they mentioned. You don't have to go to Europe to have a Camino. You could do it right here. So it just so happened that my wife and I were in the process of selling our home out in Baycrest in Town and Country of 20 years. And we were moving down here to Villarosa off of Gandy and Himes. So I decided, what was it, on a Saturday night with Jimmy, that the following week I'm going to walk from my old house to my new house. And I went on Google Maps and clearly misread that it was only a 6-mile walk, which at first I'm like, that doesn't seem right, but you know, I've never walked before. And by the way, there's a sidewalk, if you didn't know this, but it goes around the Veterans Expressway, so you actually can walk from Town and Country to Southampton and never go on a street. Well, it was when I got to West Shore Mall to use the bathroom and looked at my phone, I realized, oh, I've walked 6 miles, and the actual walk was 12 miles. So, talk about God coming in and, you know, everything. I made it though. It was a Wednesday night, barely, but 4 hours later with brand new shoes that I bought at Dick's Sporting Goods on. By the way, always break your shoes in before you do any Camino, even the Camino de Town and Country to Southampton. So, anyways, but yeah, so that's an example. That was a point to point, and the idea was that we were going to walk out of our old life into our new one. So it was very spiritual. I did have support, not the support that you get on your Camino, but it was great. So yes, you can do it. So, there you go.
Just one other little trick. It's a little Jesuit thing I learned, that on the Camino you get up really early in the morning, first thing, to see the sunrise. Sunrise happens every day, right? Obviously. And often we're not there to see it, so I just simply walk around my local park first thing in the morning on my own, and it gives me that Camino experience. You know, I'm out in nature, I'm on my own, I'm walking, the sun's coming up, and the majesty of that, it's just an ordinary park, but it is transformed, you know, by the light in the morning and by my intention. It's a intentional kind of prayer, meditation. It's a really simple thing to do, you know, and it works, you know.
Anyone else? No. All right. Well, thank you all very much for coming. It means a lot to me. It means a lot to Again, if you want to purchase Brothers in Arms, we have some copies available. They'll even autograph it for you, so it makes a great birthday present. It's a wonderful read. I definitely encourage you all to get it, and also pick up